All right, class, pre-calc group. Today is our last lesson, which is trig equations. So we're going to be doing a bunch of trig equation solving today. All right, so those are the last things that we'll be doing for the year. So first of all, how do I solve a trig equation? In most cases, the trig equations, in order to solve them, most cases, number one, you're going to have to do some form of factoring. Okay, so that means you're probably going to have it set equal to 0 to do some factoring. So look at my problem number 1. Here's a trig expression, it's a trig equation equal to 1. Notice it's a quadratic because it has a square in it. Okay, don't freak out because of all the letters. If you need to make it easier for yourself, there's a way. Okay, I mean, I can rewrite that. I'm going to, first of all, in order for me to factor, I have to make it equal to 0. So, what I'm going to do, instead of writing the big word of sine squared of x, I'm going to just replace it with s. Plus s minus 1 equals 0. That's a nice easy equation. You've seen that before hundreds of times. Now all I have to do is factor that. Just remember, s stands for sine squared of x. All right, so I factor this. Everything in your homework will be factorable. All right, so I have 2s and s, 1 and a 1. In order for me to come up with a plus in the middle, plus 1 minus. So we are looking at 2 sine of x minus 1 times the sine of x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, so we just did the factoring. Number 2, we're going to solve. Okay, and when we do our solving, we're solving for x or whatever the variable is, and eventually we're going to have to use inverse trig. Some of the fractions that you see will be recognizable. Some of the values will be recognizable. It'll be your 30, 60, 90, your 45, or they'll come from the quadrantial angles, the 0, the 90, the 180, the 270. But we're going to have to find all of the answers. When we are doing this assignment, we're going to find all of the answers between 0 degrees and 360. So we don't include 360. Okay? And we're going to do all of our answers to the nearest degree. So if there is an angle that we have to use the calculator for, we're going to round everything off to the nearest degree. So we'll do nearest degree. That's how you'll see my answers to the nearest degree. Okay, so let's finish this. So once we find the angles, then we need to find the angle in the appropriate quadrants. So we're going to be finding the angles in appropriate quadrants. What do I mean by that? Quadrants. That's your ASTC. So if we have an answer that's a positive cosine, that means we're in the first and the fourth quadrant. If we have an answer that is a negative sine, that means we are in the third and the fourth quadrants. You'll see when we do the answers. Okay, let's finish doing number 1. So we got down over here, we're going to set each of these factors equal to 0. So 2 sine of x minus 1 equals 0, and then sine of x plus 1 equals 0. Then I'm going to solve for x here. So this sine of x is equal to 1/2. This sine of x is equal to -1. These answers you should have been able to recognize. If not, you can use the calculator. Okay? I know this. The sine of what angle is equal to 1/2? That's 30 degrees. Okay. Now, what does that mean for me? Remember when we do our ASTC. 30 degrees is, this sign is positive. In what quadrant is sign positive? Well, it's positive in the first quadrant, and it's positive in the second quadrant. So 30 degrees is one answer, but then also I have a 30-degree reference angle in the second quadrant. So the official angle is starting at the x-axis all the way over. So the official angle here then is 150. So we have two answers here. Your calculator will only spit out the positive acute angle for sine. It will not give us 150. You need to know that if sine is positive, it's in the first and the second quadrant, so that means I have two answers, one in the first quadrant, one in the second quadrant. So right now we have our two answers. All right, now, sine of x is equal to -1. Well, remember your unit circle. In the unit circle, where is sine -1? Remember, sine are the y values. So I'm going to make my little unit circle. 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, 0, -1. Okay? Remember, sine is the y coordinate in the unit circle. Those are your y's, cosine and then the sine, cosine and then the sine. So sine is equal to -1 at 270 degrees. So the answers to this problem are 350, 30, 150, and 270. So this has answers of 30, 150, and 270. I know this looks confusing where we have a lot more to do, okay? But I'm going to follow these rules. Factor, solve, find the angles in the appropriate quadrants, okay? So once we follow these rules, I mean, if you can get down to this step right here, then everything else you can do on your calculator. If you can't find the other angle, fine, do your best, okay? But you just have to remember where it's located. This was a positive sign. We'll do more. Okay, let's start the next question. All right, so here we go. 2 cosine squared of x minus square root of 3 cosine of x equals 0. Don't freak out about the radical 3's and the 2's. Relax. Our first step is to factor. So what do these have in common? A cosine x. So that means I can factor out a cosine of x. So I have 2 cosine of x minus radical 3 equals 0. Then I said each factor equal to 0. So this cosine of x is equal to 0. And now this is already equal to 0, so I'll write it out this time. I won't do it anymore. And I solve for cosine of x. Okay. Now, you need to recognize when you see answers that are 0, -1, 1, okay, for sine and cosine. Okay, you need to recognize those. For tangents, it would be 0 and undefined that you have to recognize. Okay, but so when you see those 0, a 1, a -1, you need to remember that that's going to be a quadrantial angle answer. So on your unit circle, where is cosine equal to 0? 2 places. 0 up top here, this is your 90 degrees, and then 0 down here, which is 270. So this has 2 answers. So we have a 90 degrees and we have a 270. what happens is this. These answers, you have the potential for each of these to have four total answers. What do I mean by that? Each of these pieces have two possible answers. So they have at most two. They could have one, or else they could have none. Okay, we'll see in an example where they have no answer. All right, radical 3 over 2 you should recognize. The cosine of what angle is radical 3 over 2? Okay, if you don't, you can use your calculator. Okay, but if you don't recognize that, that's 30 degrees. But let's do it on the calculator. So we are doing, I'll make sure my calculator's in degree, it is. So second cos of radical 3, so there's my radical. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Second radical 3, close my parentheses, divided by 2, close my parentheses. I hit enter and it says 30 degrees. Now, notice this answer is positive. So this is a 30 degrees. Okay? Where else is cosine positive? That's when you're going to draw your little diagram. If you need to, your A, S, T, C, remember, all are positive. Sine positive, tangent positive, cosine positive. 30 degrees is in the first quadrant. And now, where else is cosine positive? Cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. So that means 30 degrees is the reference angle in the fourth quadrant. So we need the official angle that starts on the positive side of the x-axis and goes all the way around. Looks like a Pac-Man. Okay? So now that answer would be 330. Okay? So this has four answers: a 90, 270, 30, and 330. Four possible answers here. Okay? This is going to be the hardest part, finding this other angle. Once you come up with this, I'll be coming up with the other angle. Okay. I'd ask for questions, but I know I can't. Last one on this page. We have a couple more to do. All right. Factor. Well, I got to make this equal to 0. So if you want to, I'll get lazy and I'll just put c squared plus 2c minus 3 equals 0. Just like I did up here. Remember, I got rid of the sine word and I just put s squared. Here I did not. Okay. So I've got my c squared plus 2c minus 3 equals 0. So I'm going to factor that away. So I have c and a c. What do we have? A plus 3 minus 1. So now I'm going to put the word back in. So I have cosine of x plus 3. And I have cosine of x minus 1 equals 0. So we have cosine of x is equal to a negative 3, and cosine of x is equal to 1. All right, now, here's my split. Let's look at this one first. I know we were not together to do the trig curve, but all of your cosine functions and your sine functions are defined between 1 and negative 1. So if you go to type this into your calculator, inverse cosine, you're going to get an error because it's not in the domain. Okay? Well, it's not in the range. Say it that way. So let's look. So second cos negative 3, close parentheses, hit enter, and it says error. There's nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. That just means there's no answer for this side. So this side is empty set. No big deal. If they're both empty set, well then they're both empty set. But cosine of x is equal to 1. You can type this into the calculator, but like I just told you up here, You need to recognize when you see 0 and 1 and -1 for sine and cosine that it's a quadrantial angle. Where is cosine equal to 1 on the unit circle? So that means your x's are equal to 1. Well, the only x equal to 1 is right here at 0 degrees. So our only answer for this problem is 0 degrees. When you're doing your homework, you will see angles that are all over. You'll see them on the quadrantial angles. You will see them other places. They're not all 30, 60, 90s, and 45s. I did some angles that are not. So you'll have to use your calculator. Okay, let's look at the next page. Okay. Problem number 4. So problem number 4, when you look at it, has 2 different trig function in it. Don't freak out. There's nothing wrong here. Okay? Remember, rule number 1 is to factor. This right here is a product. There's nothing wrong with this. This is a product. What does this product and this thing have in common? They both have a sign in common, so I can factor out a sign. So sine of x is on the outside. And then I have 2 cosine of x plus 1 on the inside. Okay? Equal to 0. I'm going to set each piece equal to 0 now. So sine of x is equal to 0. And I'm going to rewrite this. So I have cosine of x is equal to -1 over 2. Okay, let's do this side over here. Where's my unit circle? Okay, here's my unit circle. I'm going to draw my unit circle one more time over here. Because I told you we got to recognize our answers. 1, 0. So remember, cosine and then the sine. Cosine and then the sine. Okay, so again, recognizing your answers, your calculator will only spit out the positive acute angle. It will not spit out an obtuse answer. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Where on the unit circle, because this is a quadrantial angle answer, where on the unit circle does sine equal 0? Well, it's equal to 0 here at 0 degrees, and it's equal to 180 degrees at 180. It's equal to 0 right here at 180. Okay? So this has 2 answers over here. All right, so now we have to take care of this side. Cosine of x equals -1. This is the first time that we're seeing a negative. All that means is what quadrant are we in? That's all that it says. What quadrant are we at? Where is cosine negative? According to our ASTC, cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and quadrant 3. If you need to, you can type that into the calculator, and you can actually, it will actually tell you an answer. It will actually give you an obtuse answer. It'll be but it won't. So second cos of -0.5 gives us 120 degrees. Okay, what does that mean, 120 degrees? It gave us the positive answer. And that's what we want. We want the answers from 0 to 360. Remember from the front, 0 to 360 for all of our answers. So it didn't give us -30. Okay, it gave us 120 degrees. Okay, so 120 puts us here. That's 120. There's one of our answers. Okay, well, technically, what does that mean, 120? Well, 120 is the 120 is the official answer, but what's the reference angle? Because we need to know how far to go into the third quadrant. Going into the third quadrant, this is the reference angle. This is the reference angle here. They have to be the same value. Well, if 120 is the official angle, 60 degrees was the reference angle. That's right. The cosine of what angle is equal to 1/2? It's 60 degrees. Okay? So now that I know it's 60 degrees, we are 60 degrees into this quadrant. So then the official angle is we have to add 180 plus 60. So we have to do 180 plus 60, which is 240 degrees. Okay? So we have our four answers, 0, 180, 120, and 240. Excuse me. All right. Number 42 from the homework. And maybe I'll do another homework question, I don't know. Okay. Number 42 from the homework. Now, there are two different trig functions. Is there any factoring that I could do? In other words, remember, before you start to factor, it has to be equal to 0. Well, that means I have to move the -3 to the other side. Okay. Also, notice it's out of order. So I'm actually going to take all of this junk and move it to the right-hand side. Okay. So I'm going to get this. Actually, I'm going to get this equal to 0. So I'm going to take all this, move it this way. So 0 equals 2 cosine squared of theta minus 3 sine of theta minus 3. Okay? As in question 4, you had a product of sine and cosine. With a sign here, we were able to factor out the sine. I don't have a product here anywhere. So I'm stuck. No, you're not. Remember that Pythagorean identity? Sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. And all of its variations. So from this, I can write cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared. There we go. So I'm going to use an identity right here. So it's in terms of sines. So I'm going to take this identity, this Pythagorean identity, I'm going to rewrite it so it's this. So I'm going to do my substitution. So I have 2, big giant parentheses, minus 3 sine of theta minus 3 equals 0. And inside here, I'm going to use this identity. So cosine squared of theta is 1 minus sine squared. 1 minus sine squared theta. All right, now they're all terms of sines. Now I have to do some cleaning up. So I got to distribute. Okay. I got to combine like terms. And I'm not going to factor with a negative, so I'm going to divide everything by a -1. If I divide everything by a -1, that's right, all of my signs change. Okay? Which I did to the left, I did to the right. If I divide by 0, if I 0 divided by a -1 doesn't change anything. I'm ready to factor now. So with this one identity, we were able to clean it up to this. Okay? Okay. So let me get my factoring done. So I have a 2s and an s, 1 and a 1, plus and a plus. Okay, so I have 2 sine theta plus 1 equals 0. Sine of theta plus 1 equals 0. So sine of theta equals a negative 1/2. Sine of theta equals a negative 1. Okay. Let's take care of this side first. If I ignore the negative sign, the sine of what angle is equal to 1/2? 30 degrees. That needs to be memorized. But because it's negative, what quadrant is the 30 degrees in? That's right, we're in quadrants 4 and 3. So we have 30 degrees here and 30 degrees here. If you actually type this into the calculator, it's going to say negative 30. Negative 30 is not an answer for us. All of our answers are positive. So if you type this into the calculator, it would say negative 30 degrees. Okay. Second sine of negative 0.5. Negative 30. We only want positive answers, not negative. So we have our reference angles in the third and in the fourth. So in the third, we're looking at this. So that's 180 plus 30, which is 210. And then we have to go all the way around for the other one. Go all the way around for the other one. So that's 360 minus 30, which is 330. So we have our two answers here. Okay. Okay. Now, negative 1, here we go. That's a quadrantial angle answer. So where on the unit circle does sine equal negative 1? So where's the y value negative 1? Right down here at 270. And if you type that into the calculator, it would say negative 90. Yeah, which is clear. And it says negative 90. Well, negative 90 means we go backwards, so it puts us at positive 270. So we have our answers. Okay. I want to do one tangent problem. I notice I haven't done any tangents here. So I'm actually going to do a tangent problem from the homework. No, I don't want to do the one from the homework because we're not using the calculator for it. I want to use one where we have to use the calculator. All right, let's do oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do number 18. This is number 18 from the homework. Number 18 from the homework. Tan squared of theta plus tan of theta minus 2 equals 0. Okay. So it's a tangent problem, no big deal. We factor. T and a T. T for tan. All right, 2 and a 1. Plus 2 minus 1. So we're looking at tan of theta equals a negative 2. and we have tan of theta is equal to 1. Believe it or not, this is not a unit circle answer. This is actually coming from one of your triangles. Okay? Or you can just type it into the calculator, but this actually comes from one of our triangles. This is a 45. Tangent of theta is equal to 1. Theta is equal to 45 degrees. Okay. So, but that's positive. So we have to go back to our ASTC. So we are 45 degrees into the first quadrant. So there's one answer. And then where else is tangent positive? That's right, down here into the third quadrant. 45 degrees is the reference. So going all the way around, 180 plus 45 is 225. Okay? So I didn't need a calculator there. If not, you can. Type it right in a calculator. Inverse tan of 1 spits out 45. Okay. This I'm going to type into the calculator. I have to type this into the calculator. There's no way that I can do it without the calculator. So second tan of negative 2. And notice it says a negative 63.43. I said we're rounding everything off to the nearest degree. So we are looking at a negative 63 degree angle. Now remember what I said. We're only dealing with positive answers, 0 to 360. So the only thing negative 63 tells us is what quadrants we are in. A, S, T, C. Where is tangent negative? That's right, in quadrants 2 and quadrant 4. So we have 63 here and 63 there. So I need the official angles. So in the second quadrant, it's 180 minus 63. 180 minus 63. And that gives us 117. And then in the fourth quadrant, we have to go all the way around. That's 360 minus 63, and that gives us 297. Okay? So we have 45, 225, a 117, and a 297. There's all of the answers. Okay? Okay, good luck with your homework. I did 2 of the questions for you. Question 45, you will need to do just like we did question 42. Okay, where's my 40? Question 45 from the homework is going to be done just like what we did in question 42. Although I think 45 is a little easier to do. Okay? Okay, good luck with your homework, folks.